So looking at the sheet music in the book, at the top of the page you've got the song title, which is Count Me In. Then beneath that, to the left-hand side, it says swing. So that's the style or the genre of the piece. So we're going to be playing a swing piece. So make sure you've got your kit tuned to jazz tuning. So I've got my toms nice and high. I've also got these chains on my cymbals. So I've got one on my ride cymbal and also my crash. So these chains actually replicate a rivet sound. So in jazz, often we have rivets in our cymbals, which gives it a nice sizzle sound. So if we don't have rivet cymbals, we can use these chains, which give the effect. So when we hit the cymbal, the chain vibrates on the cymbal and gives it like a sizzle sound. Okay, so like I said, it replicates that rivet sound. So you can use rivet cymbals, you can use these chains, or you can just use normal cymbals. Okay, the rivet sound just kind of adds to the sound of the piece. Okay, so it's not essential. Okay, so we're going to be playing swing, and then beside that it says a quarter note equals 90. So that's the tempo of the piece. So there's going to be a quarter note pulse, and there's going to be 90 quarter notes every minute. Okay, and then beside that you've got the swing key. Okay, so this is telling you how to play the eighth note. So it says 2 eighth notes, which we normally play on the downbeat and the midpoint of the beat on the and. We're going to be playing them, so it says equals a quarter note triplet and an eighth note triplet. Okay, so that means we're going to be playing the first eighth note on the downbeat, but the second eighth note, which is normally on the and, right in the middle of the beat, we're going to be playing later. Okay, and that is what swing is. It's when we play the upbeat later. Okay, so we're going to be pushing it to later in the beat towards 2/3 and 3/4, that sort of area. Okay, so you just want to be playing that all the eighth note ands, the eighth note upbeats, you're going to be playing later than normal. Okay, not right in the middle of the beat, they're going to be further along. Okay, so that's swing, so that's what that key means. And you can see the letter A there in a box letting you know we're straight in at section A, okay, in the first bar. So if we look at the first bar of music, you can see we've got a percussion clef there letting us know it's drum notation on the stave, and then we've got the time signature, so it's 4/4 this piece, so we've got a 4 at the top, which tells us there's 4 beats in the bar, so you've got a bar of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 4 at the bottom of the time signature tells us each one of those beats is a quarter note. So those beats, 1, 2, 3, 4, are each quarter notes, so you've got 4 quarter note beats in the bar. Right, so first bar of music, what we've got is we've got quarter notes on the ride cymbal, so we're hitting all the downbeats on the ride. Okay, so you're playing 1, 2, 3, 4 on the ride cymbal, and then the snare plays the 2 with the ride, and also the and of 3. Okay, now that and of 3 is an upbeat, so it's eighth note upbeat, so you're going to play that later. So rather than playing 3 and, you're going to play 3 and. Okay, so if I give you something to put it into context, so a pulse. So we'll start with the downbeats on the ride cymbal. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you hear that sizzle on the ride there, so that's that chain doing that. So like I said, really adds to the sound, that jazz sound. Okay, then the snare joins in on the 2 and the and of 3. So like I said, that and of 3 needs to be later than normal. Okay, so when we play it normally, that's what we call straight time. Okay, but we're playing swing, so we're going to play that and later in the beat. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll play it straight first of all. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so let's try that. And also just to mention, the grip in the left hand, I'm going to be using traditional grip. Okay, just because with the feel of the snare drum in jazz, you don't want to be overpowering it. Okay, so the ride cymbal plays and really dominates the dynamic in the groove, and the snare drum plays just beneath it, okay, in dynamic. So you want it a little bit quieter. So holding the left stick in traditional grip just makes it a bit easier to play quieter, okay, with that left hand. If you hold it in match grip, sometimes if you're used to playing like more kind of rock, pop, funk sort of genres where you're really hitting that backbeat with the left hand, sometimes you can kind of do that automatically occasionally, and it just kind of holding it in traditional grip just reminds you, hang on, we're in jazz, keep it quiet with that left hand, okay, keep it down. So I'm going to be holding it in traditional grip, but you don't have to, you can hold it in match grip if you're more comfortable with that. Okay, it is good to kind of use traditional grip in jazz just because, again, it adds to the authenticity of the genre. Okay, it helps you play because you feel differently holding it like that. It kind of puts you in like jazz mode. Okay, that's how I feel. So I'm going to be holding it traditional grip. So we're going to play the 2 and the 3. So we'll play it in straight time first. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that was 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we're going to swing that upbeat, that 8th note upbeat on the and of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that late upbeat on the and of 3, okay, giving it that swing feel. So let's give that bar a try first of all, okay, so we're going to loop that bar just to get used to that with the hands. And beneath the bar you've got MF, which is short for mezzo forte, half loud, about your normal playing level. And remember, we're playing jazz, so the normal playing level for jazz is quieter than it is for like rock, pop, funk, R&B and all that, okay? So bring it down, it's a more quiet genre, so mezzo forte, not too quiet, but just bring it a little bit further down than you would for say rock, okay? So let's try that first bar. And then in the second bar on the ride cymbal, you've got the rhythm 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Okay, so again, you've got 2 swung 8th notes in that bar on the and of 2 and the and of 4. All the ands are swung in this piece. So rather than 1, 2, and 3, 4, and, we've got 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. And that's a typical jazz ride rhythm. Okay, so let's try that on the ride cymbal. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we just need to add 1 snare, which is coming in on the 3, okay, which will be played with the ride. So on that downbeat, so no swung snare notes in this bar, so adding in the snare drum on the 3, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's try that bar now, we'll loop it through. And now we're going to try bars 1 and 2 back to back. So the rhythm of the 2 bars is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, And then counting those. So obviously on the upbeats, they are ands, but we're playing them on the Okay, so we can count them as, or we can carry on counting them as ands as well. So we could count the rhythm 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Okay, so let's try those 2 bars, the first 2 bars of the piece. And then bar 3 is a very similar bar to what we played in bar 1. The only difference is we've got 8th notes on the 2 instead of the quarter note that we had in the first bar. Okay, so the rhythm for this bar is 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got on the ride cymbal, quarter note, 8th notes, and then we've got the downbeat, upbeat on the snare drum, and then we've got a quarter note on the downbeat of 4. Okay, so with the ride cymbal, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then added in that snare drum, which is playing the upbeat of 3. So again, remember you need to swing that note. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's give bar 3 a try. And then in the final bar of line 1, bar 4, you've got the rhythm 1, 2, 3, 4. So the ride cymbal is playing all the downbeats. That snare drum is just playing the upbeat of 1, that and of 1, or the ah of 1. Okay, so remember, swing it. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's give bar 4 a try. And now bars 3 and 4, so the rhythm for those two bars is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's try bars 3 and 4. And now we'll try the whole of line 1. So now we're coming to line 2, so we're moving away from the ride cymbal here. So looking at bar 5, the first bar of line 2, we've got the rhythm 1, 2, 3 and 4. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So we've got quarter note, eighth note, so swing that upbeat, and then we've got another quarter note. So you've got first 2 quarter notes on the snare drum, just playing right, left. So we got 1, 2, then you've got another snare drum as an eighth note on the 3, and then we've got that swung eighth note on the upbeat of 3, playing the high tom, and then we come down to the low tom for the 4. So you've got right, left, right. So slowly, 1, 2, 3, 4. Going back to traditional grip. Okay, so let's try bar 1 of line 2, which is bar 5 of the piece. And then the next bar we've got a quarter note, 2 eighth notes, and then 2 more quarter notes. The rhythm of the second bar of line 2 is 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got snare with the right, and then 2 more snares, right, left. So again, swing that left hand on the and of 2. And then we've got 3, 4 on the bass drum. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's try bar 2. And now putting those 2 bars together, so bars 5 and 6 of the piece, the first 2 bars are line 2. And in the next bar, which is bar 7 of the piece, we've got eighth notes on the 1, quarter note rest on 2, eighth notes on the 3, and a quarter note rest on 4. So the rhythm for this bar is 1, 3, So we're resting on that 2 and 4. 1, rest, 3, rest. So you've got a snare drum on the downbeat of 1, then a bass drum on the upbeat. So you want to swing that upbeat on the bass drum. We rest on 2 and play the same thing on 3. So play the downbeat with the snare, right hand, bass drum plays the upbeat. Then we rest on 4. So that bar is 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's try bar 3 of line 2, which is bar 7 of the piece. And in the last bar of line 2, which is bar 8 of the piece, we've got 2 quarter notes on the ride and snare drum together for the first 2 beats. So you've got 1, 2, so make sure you hit those 2 parts of the kit in unison. And then we've got another note on the ride and snare drum, this time is an 8th note for 3. And then we play the bass drum on the upbeat of 3, the and of 3, which is obviously swung. So that third beat is... And then we've got quarter note rest on 4, right? So we've got 1, 2, 3, and rest. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's try that bar. So the 4th bar of line 2, which is bar 8 of the piece. And now we'll try bars 7 and 8, okay, back to back, those 2 bars. So just make sure when you play bar 7, you're resting on that quarter note for the 4th beat, okay? You don't want to come into bar 8 too early. So the rhythm of the 2 bars is 1 and rest, 3 and rest, 1, 2, 3 and rest. Okay, so let's try those 2 bars. And now we'll try the whole of line 2. And that brings us to the end of section A. So now we're going to try and play the whole section. So we're going to go from the first bar of the piece to the end of the second line, bar 8. So in that first line of section A, it's groove based. You're on the ride cymbal and snare drum. Okay, so make sure that ride cymbal is the loudest part of the groove. That snare drum wants to play just beneath the ride. Okay, so don't overpower that left hand. Remember, you're at mezzo forte, and then we come into line 2, where you move away from the groove. We're moving around the kit. Okay, so make sure you're comfortable swinging those 8th notes. Let's try the whole of section A. So now we come into section B at line 3 of the piece. So you can see the letter B there in a box, then you know it's the start of section B there at bar 9. So in bar 9, we're back to that groove part of the kit, the ride cymbal and snare drum. So we've got the rhythm 1, 2, 3, 4 for this bar, swinging those up beats again. So you've got ride cymbal on the 1 for a quarter note, that's your 1. Then we've got 8th notes, first one on the ride cymbal and snare drum in unison, and a swung 8th note on the end of 2 on the ride cymbal. So you've got 1, 2, ah. Then we've got the 3 on the ride cymbal, the upbeat of 3. So again, you'll swing this note on the and of 3 on the snare drum, and then we've got the 4 on the snare as well, which we'll play with the left hand. Okay, so keep the right hand on ride cymbal, left hand on snare. So nice and slow that bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's try that bar now. We'll loop that bar through. Beneath the bar, you can see it says MP, which is short for mezzo piano, half soft. So we want to bring this down, okay? So obviously, section A, we're at mezzo forte. Now we want to bring it down 1 dynamic level to mezzo piano, okay? So it's not a drastic drop down, but it is a slight drop down in dynamic from the first section, okay? So let's try that first bar, section B, bar 9. And then in the next bar, we've got the rhythm 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got ride cymbal playing that rhythm. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's try that. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the snare drum joins in on the and of 2 and the 3. So that upbeat of 2, remember, is swung, and then the 3 on the downbeat with the ride cymbal. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. So just playing in unison on the and of 2, which is obviously swung, and then the 3 as well. Okay, so let's try that second bar of section B, which is bar 10. And now we'll try bars 9 and 10. And then the next 2 bars of that line, so bars 11 and 12, the 3rd and 4th bar of section B, we've got that really common jazz ride rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, for 2 bars, okay, those 2 bars. And then we've just got a bass drum on the 1 of the first of those 2 bars, okay? So you've got that ride cymbal rhythm, 1, 2, 3, 4. Bass drum on the 1 of the first of those 2 bars, bar 11, okay? So let's try those 2 bars now, bars 11 and 12 of the piece. And now we'll try the whole of that line. So the first line of section B, the 3rd line of the piece. Okay, so remember you're at mezzo piano. We just want to hook up all 4 of them bars. Just make sure you're comfortable playing these grooves in jazz. Okay, so obviously every bar is slightly different. So you never kind of get into that comfort zone. You want to make sure you're reading it and you're comfortable swinging those 8th notes. Okay, so let's try the whole of that first line of section B. And then coming on to the second line of section B, line 4 of the piece, we come away from the groove now, we're going around the kit again. So in the first bar of that line, which is bar 13 of the piece, we've got an 8th note rhythm through the whole bar. So you've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and those swung up beats, or you can count them 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, the reason you've got those 2 different ways of counting them is they are ands. Okay, obviously upbeat 8th notes are counted as an and, but they're not played on the and, which is the midpoint of the beat. Okay, so if you're going to count them as ands, make sure you count the and later. But if you are going to count them as, that's the reason you do that is because that's where you're playing the note on the a. Okay, so either way is fine. Just make sure you're playing them in the right place. Okay, they're later than the midpoint of the beat. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're playing paradiddles in this bar. So you're going to start with a left paradiddle, left hand's on the snare drum, right hand on the high tom. So you've got left, right, left, left. So 1 8th notes there for the first half of the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, then in the next bar, you're moving that right hand down to the floor tom and you're playing a right paradiddle. Left hand stays on the snare drum. So you've got right, left, right, right for 3 and 4 and. So there's 1, 2. Okay, so if we put those 2 bars together, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so swung 8th notes, starting with a left paradiddle. Make sure that left stays on the snare. Right hand's going from tom in the first paradiddle to floor tom in the second paradiddle. Okay, so let's try that bar, bar 13. And in the next bar, you've got the same rhythm, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and the same rudiments. You've got paradiddles. You're starting with a left paradiddle again, but slightly different orchestration this time. So the left hand moves up to the high tom to start the paradiddle. Right hand comes down to the snare. Okay, so you've switched up. In the first bar of this line, you were this way around, so left hand playing snare, right on high tom. Now you're the other way, left on high tom, right on snare for the first left paradiddle. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in the next paradiddle, the right hand comes up to the high tom again to play the first note of the paradiddle. Left hand switches to snare. So you're switching back round. So you start here, then you come here for the first 2 notes of the paradiddle. So you got right, left, and then you come down with the right hand to the floor top. Right, right. So the second half of the paradiddle is 1, 2. Okay, so just make sure you're comfortable with that switch up from left hand starting on the high tom. So you've got left, left, then they switch, right, left, right there, okay? So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's try that bar now. So bar 14 of the piece. And now we'll try those 2 bars, so bars 13 and 14. Okay, you've got the same rhythm for both bars, the same rudiment, just obviously playing it on different parts of the kit, okay, moving your hands around a little bit. Okay, tricky because you're starting with the left paradiddle. Okay, so it kind of feels like a left lead couple of bars there. So let's try those 2 bars, make sure you're comfortable swinging those 8th notes. And in the next bar, bar 15, you've got the rhythm 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got that swung upbeat 8th note again. So you've got snare on the first downbeat on the 1 with the left hand. Right plays the high tom on the 2. So you've got left, right. Left plays snare again on the 3. Bass drum plays the swung 8th note on the and a 3, which obviously be playing on the a. And then you've got a 4 on the floor tom with the right hand. So you've got left, kick right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that late swung bass drum on the and of 3 there. So let's try that bar now. So you've moved up now to MF for this bar, which is short for mezzo forte half loud. So we're back up to that initial dynamic you played in section A. Okay, so let's try that bar now, bar 15 at mezzo forte. And in the last bar of that line, bar 16 of the piece, we've got a quarter note on the bass drum on 1, quarter note on the snare drum on 2, we'll play that with the left hand, then we've got an 8th note on the floor tom on 3, an upbeat on the high tom on the and of 3, which will be swung, then we've got an 8th note rest on the 4, then we play the upbeat of 4 on the snare drum with the left hand, so again that note will be swung. Okay, so 2 swung notes in this bar, the and of 3 and the and of 4, okay? So you've got 1, 2, 3, Okay, so those 2 last notes are both swung, the of 3 and the of 4, so just make sure you're hitting them in the right place. You haven't got that 4 there to kind of help with the timing, so it's a little bit trickier to hit that final note because you haven't got the 4, obviously you're resting on it. So that bar nice and slow, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's give that bar a try now. So bar 16. And now we'll try the previous bar as well, so bars 15 and 16, just to link those bars up. Okay, so remember for these 2 bars you're at mezzo forte. And now we'll try the whole of that line. So in the first 2 bars, you've got those paradiddles. They're at mezzo piano, half soft. And then you finish with a right, because obviously you're leading those 2 bars with the left paradiddle. So you finish the second bar with a right, which comfortably brings you into the left-hand start of bar 3 as well. Okay, so it all flows nicely. Very left-hand dominant, this bar. Obviously, left hand plays the snare drum on the groove, so it's comfortable being there, but just get comfortable with it leading the fills as well, okay? Especially on the rudiments with the paradiddles. So remember, in those second 2 bars of this line, you move up to mezzo forte, okay? So first 2 bars, mezzo piano, second 2 bars, mezzo forte. So let's try the whole of that line, the second line of section B. And that brings us to the end of section B, so let's put the whole section together. So just like section A, the first line is groove, second line is fills, okay? So let's try the whole of section B, lines 3 and 4 of the piece. You're at mezzo piano for the first line of section B, as well as the first 2 bars of the second line of section B, and then we change the mezzo forte for the final 2 bars. Okay, so let's try the whole of section B. And now we're moving to the final section of the piece, section C, which starts at bar 17. So you can see a letter C in a box there. So in the first bar of section C, we've just got a quarter note rhythm on the ride and bass drum. So it's going to line up on the downbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. And beneath the bar, you see we've got an F, which is short for forte, which means loud. And in the next bar, we've got a quarter note on the 1 on the ride and bass drum again. And this time on a 2, we've got a hi-hat with foot. So you're going to play that with the left foot, obviously. So you're just going to chick those hi-hats together on the second downbeat. So make sure they chick together right on the downbeat. And then you've got the same thing for beats 3 and 4. So ride and bass drum on 3, hi-hat with foot on the 4. Okay, so you're just hitting downbeats in this bar, just like you did in the previous bar. And now we'll try those 2 bars, bars 17 and 18. So just a quarter note rhythm for both bars. Just make sure we're hitting those downbeats. And in the next bar, we've got quarter notes again. First quarter note on the 1 is on ride and bass drum. Second quarter note's snare drum with the left hand. Then we've got the same thing for beats 3 and 4 again. So ride and bass drum on 3, snare drum on the 4. And in the final bar of the first line of section C, we've got quarter notes for the 1 and the 2 on the ride and bass drum. So we've got 1, 2, just hitting those downbeats again. And then we've got ride cymbals on the 3 and the and of 3, which would obviously be swung, and then the 4. So you've got 3 and 4 for the final 2 beats of the bar. So you've got 1, 2, 3 and 4. And now we'll try bars 19 and 20. And then putting the whole of that line together, the first line of section C, bars 17, 18, 19 and 20. Remember, this whole line is at forte, so loud, okay? Jazz loud, not really, really, really loud, just a bit louder than mezzo forte, okay? So one dynamic level up from mezzo forte. So let's try the whole of that first line of section C. And now we come into the final line of the piece. So at bar 21, the first bar of the final line, you've got an eighth note rhythm again. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, swinging those upbeats. And the rudiment we're playing in this bar is double strokes. Okay, we're going to start with the right hand now. So the right's going to lead this rudiment. We've got rights on high tom, lefts on snare, rights move to floor tom, lefts stay on snare. Okay, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, so let's try that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and beneath the bar you see we've got MF, so we're back to mezzo forte, half loud. Okay, so we were at forte for the previous line, now we've dropped back down to mezzo forte. So let's try that bar now at mezzo forte. And in the next bar, we've got the rhythm 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got a snare drum on the 1 for a quarter note. We're going to play that with the right hand because we've just finished the previous bar with a left, left. Okay, so we're going to play left, left, then come into a right hand on that next note, on the first note of this bar. Then we've got a bass drum on the 2 for a quarter note. Then we've got 2 snare drums as eighth notes. We're going to play them right, left. Remember to swing that note on the left hand, the upbeat. Then we've got another bass drum on the downbeat of 4. So that for the second bar, the final line, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's give that bar a try. And now we'll try the first 2 bars of the final line, bars 21 and 22. So you finish the first of those bars with the left, left, and then you're going to come in to start the next bar with the right hand on the snare. So they're on the same drum, just left, left, right, okay, for that transition from the first bar into the second bar of that line. So let's try those 2 bars now. We're at mezzo forte. And then in the next bar, which is the third bar of the final line, we've got a ride cymbal rhythm, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we've got a crash on the 1 of the next bar for a half note. So that's going to last 2 beats, 1, 2. And then we've got snare drums as eighth notes for the 3, 4, Okay, so you're going to play right, left for those 4 eighth notes on the snare drum. So those 2 bars, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, Okay, so nice and slow. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you see I've got a chain on my crash cymbal as well, just to give that rivet sound for the crash as well. So again, not essential, but just adds to the kind of sound, the authenticity of the piece. Okay, so we're going to try those 2 bars now, bars 23 and 24, bars 3 and 4, the final line. And And then in the final bar of the piece, you know it's the final bar because you've got that final bar line, we've just got a crash symbol for a whole note. So it's going to crash on the 1 for the final bar. And you can see we've got a fermata above the note, which just means to pause. So you see to hold that note, okay, let it ring. And that's what this chain helps with, just helps with the sustain of the cymbal, just lets it ring a little longer, okay, which will help with that fermata. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to try the final line of the piece. Okay, so play through the whole line bars 21, 22, 23, 24 and 25. So we've got 5 bars in this final line and we're at mezzo forte. And now we're going to try the whole of section C. So in that first line of section C, it's more groove based again. We're on the ride cymbal, bass drum and snare drum. Okay, we're at forte for that first line, and then we come into the final line of the piece where we play a rudiment in the first bar. So double strokes, we're down to mezzo forte, and then we play another rhythm around the kit for another bar, then we're back on the ride, finishing with that crash and snare drum rhythm. And remember, we've got the fermata at the end. Okay, so let's try the whole of section C. So now we're going to put the whole piece together. So remember, this is a group B piece, so there's no backing track, it's just the drum solo, so it's just us. Okay, you want to try it initially with a metronome at the piece tempo, which is 90 beats per minute. That's just going to obviously help you play it at the right tempo. But once you've played it a few times and you're used to the tempo, try and turn the metronome off and just play it with your internal time, okay? So remember, we don't want to be dependent on a metronome. It's great sometimes, a metronome, it's got its uses obviously, but you want to develop your internal time as well. Okay, so make sure you're doing that too. And this piece is all about getting used to this genre of music. You're playing jazz, so it's different to other genres, so make sure you're changing your style of drumming, okay, to adapt to this genre. So you've got different sounds. Obviously we've got higher pitched drums, we've got the rivets or the rivet effects on the cymbals, we've got things like traditional grip we can use. We're playing a little bit quieter than other genres as well, the dynamic levels are coming down a bit. Okay, so there's always things to get used to, as well as the swing element of the piece. Okay, that's the other thing. So it's having good timekeeping in swing time. So not letting that swing affect the time. So make sure all those downbeats are planted on the 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's eighth notes, you're comfortably swinging them and it's not affecting the rhythm. Those swung eighth notes really complement the feel of this piece, okay? So they should feel nice. So you shouldn't feel like you're kind of delaying them, like playing them late or playing them in the kind of in unexpected places, because they do kind of really feel nice on those swung up beats. Okay, so it's all about developing those parts of your playing, okay? Playing the style of jazz and also swing time. Make sure everything's feeling nice. If it feels nice, it sounds nice, and obviously making sure we're comfortable with the rudiments as well in swing time. Okay, so let's try the whole piece all the way through, sections A, B and C, linking it all together.